Okay, hi everyone. I just finished doing a video. My battery decided to die right when I was at the end of it. So I don't know if I've lost it all. YouTube says it's processing it. Who knows? So I may have to redo that one again. Um, but I thought I would, for now, move on to my next thing. Hopefully I won't have to re-record that. I feel like all I do is re-record videos, but what are you going to do? So I'm going to answer the next question I got. That first video was answering kind of two questions at once, but this video I'd like to answer around wanderings question. What are your takes on medieval Renaissance tarot decks? And yes and no questions. That, well, um, as I mentioned in my summer check-in video, I do early music. I'm kind of a huge dork in regards to medieval Renaissance stuff. It was my minor in college, almost was my major, um, or my second major. I was mildly obsessed with it, still am. So it's sort of the basis of a lot of my interest in um, religion in general. So this is a good question. I have seen a few different uh, medieval Renaissance decks. I think my favorite and the one that I use when I'm not using a more traditional deck, I do like to use this one because it is basically a traditional deck. And I'm sure many of you have seen this before, but I have it right here, the Golden Tower by Cat Black. This is a fantastic deck. Um, and I think what's so nice about it and so cool about it is that it is all legit medieval artwork photoshopped and I mean compiled into these tarot images. I mean some of these she took just I mean the smallest aspects of of paintings and portraiture from mostly from the late 14th and 15th centuries, and smushed them together into these Rider-Waite-esque images. So this is kind of a tour de force, I think. I thought this deck was brilliant. It came out a few years ago, back in, when did this come out? 2003, that's what I thought. So that's a really good one if you're interested in using a more medieval deck. There is another one, um, I want to say called La Roue de Fortune, the Wheel of Fortune. I, I think um, that I've seen that I almost got. I ended up not getting it, but that's also a pretty good one. Of course, the old Visconti Sforza deck is interesting. I don't have it, and I've always kind of wanted to get it just to kind of get a feel for it out of curiosity. I would imagine that one's pretty tough to read with, though, given the fact that it's a lot like the Crowley, but even harder. It's much like the Marseille, of course. The Marseille deck, of course, I have it right over here, excuse me, and it's all warped from the humidity because I haven't been taking good care of it, frankly. I don't use it often, but I got it for Christmas this year, past year now. Um, and I have I want to say the Universal Marseille deck. It's not the prettiest or most refined of the Marseille versions, but it's still pretty nice. And I do get some really interesting readings with it. This is by Lo Scarabeo, uh, the more international of tarot companies. Very good deck. I think the Marseille, if you really want authentic medieval tarot or late medieval esque. I mean, well, the Marseille is much more of a 17th, 18th century kind of concoction, but its images and archetypes are very Renaissancey in a way. So of course that's a very good one, and I can only think of one more to show you, and I've got it over here now. And this one is the Caitlin Matthews Da Vinci Enigma Tarot. Um, all of these decks that I've mentioned, if you're asking my take on them, I like them. I like to use them. I think they're really effective, and it's fun for me as kind of a wannabe medievalist. Um, I like to work with them. This one, I have very conflicted feelings about this one. I don't know if any of you have this deck, have ever seen it before, have ever worked with it. Um, I am mildly obsessed with Leonardo da Vinci, um, his artwork and his life, and just, um, I love his stuff. And so when I bought this deck, I thought this was going to be like the coolest thing ever. I was so excited. And this is possibly, talk about an enigma, this is possibly the strangest deck I have ever used in my life. And the reason for that is simply that it has a vibe that is very different from any other tarot deck I've ever used, in that it is almost impossible to read. For me, I find it utterly impossible to read intuitively without the book, because the most effective way of using said deck is to basically use all these different meanings that Caitlin Matthews came up with for all these cards. I mean, if you look at her book that comes with it, it's not half as bad as the Book of Tot, but she's got this cute little book, which is bigger than the usual little white books that you get. But for any card, whether um, major or minor, you get this whole page of, and 5 different pieces of information, 6. You get a general question for the card, what to ask yourself. You get the background of the card historically, and as far as a piece of art, because all of these cards come from his sketches, which is fantastic. But some of them really don't easily depict what they're supposed to depict, as far as divination is concerned. You get a soul code, she calls it, which is sort of like the metaphysical advice that the card gives you. You get the upright meaning, the reversed meaning, and then you get these disconnected meanings. Okay. So she really clearly meditated a long time on a lot of these cards. I mean, Caitlin Matthews is no dummy, but I find it to be a very overwhelming deck. And yet, if you use the little spread that she came up with, she calls it the Destiny spread. I mean, on one hand, it's an incredibly schmaltzy deck, and I have no tolerance for schmaltz. It's kind of I'm on a big campaign in my personal life against schmaltz, death to schmaltz. I hate it. And there's something really new agey schmaltzy about this that I just can't swallow. But at the same time, using that spread and using that deck has given me some of the most interesting and thought-provoking readings I've ever done. Sometimes more so than a full-blown opening of the key, or with the top deck, whatever other deck. Doesn't matter. I mean, it is a very, very good deck if you don't mind reading and looking up all the meanings. And even after you practice with it for a while, and you feel like you can kind of intuitively figure it out, my intuition is always like here with the deck, and then I go back and read, and I realize that everything they were saying was much more in line with what the book said they were going to mean, which is really strange. I don't know why that is. I really don't. I've never seen that before. I or experienced that with any other deck. I really don't know what the explanation for that is. I mean, it's almost like the energy of Caitlin Matthews is just so ingrained in this deck that you can't interpret it fluidly, or at least I have a hard time with that. I know I've spoken to a few people that use that deck that don't have that problem. I do, for whatever reason. Who the hell knows? So I use it rarely. So in some ways that's like my favorite Renaissance medieval deck, and in some ways it's not. I mean, like I said, I have very mixed feelings about that one. I think overall my favorite is again Golden Tarot. And of course, we cannot discount good old Rider-Waite. Rider-Waite is a medieval tarot deck. I mean, all these images, as we know, are based on what late 19th, early 20th century people thought the Middle Ages looked like. Um, and so a lot of these images are very faux medieval. So that's kind of an interesting side to that deck too. Um, I don't know. I think they're perfectly fine. I think whatever works for you, as I always say. But those are just the ones that I use that are kind of interesting. Certainly the Da Vinci one is the most interesting. Uh, yeah, and then the other part of your question, what do I think of yes and no questions with the tarot? That's a trickier question because I don't, in my personal practice, I don't usually use yes or no. Excuse me, I don't usually use yes or no questions. I I don't want to say that you can't ask them, but I don't find them effective. And again, I don't know why that is, but it, whoever's in charge, of tarot, tarot results, so to speak, does not particularly like narrow questions like that. Um, and in general, I find that when you take that question and try to turn it into something that's not so definitive as and bipolar in a way, uh, it, you usually get a better reading. You get a better sense of the question and your situation in the first place. And that's not to say that by broadening the question you make it so that the results can be fitted into whatever, because that's of course a common complaint on the part of skeptics in regards to tarot. It's so broad, it's so general that it really doesn't mean anything. And we know as readers that that's not quite true. Um, but it is kind of just turning that yes or no question into something else. Mary Greer, which I mentioned in the video that might upload, might not, does have a spread and a way of dealing with yes or no questions that I think I've tried it. I didn't keep using it. I didn't like using it. Um, in which I don't know if you've seen it, but she does a 3-card spread, and she uses reversals. And basically, if you've got a majority of upright cards, the answer is yes. If you've got a majority of reversed cards, the answer is no. And if you have, well, if you do 3 cards, you won't have equality. If you were to expand it to an even number, of course, you could conceivably have half and half. In which case, you might say that it's sort of irrelevant or undecided or whatever. Um, I suggest that you could try that, see how that works for you if you like that. Again, I didn't like that because I felt like by doing that I had to ignore the divinatory meanings of the cards. Like, if let's say you did that reading and you wanted to ask, for instance, how will my relationship with so and so pan out? Is it going to become something? And let's say you got or rather, let's rephrase the question. Uh, is my because I asked I didn't ask a yes or no question. See, this is what I mean. I don't ever ask them, so I'm not used to phrasing it. Um, let's say I wanted to ask, um, does so and so have a crush on me? Does so and so like me? And typical tarot question, right? And you did that spread. Let's say you got the Ten of Swords, the Tower, and the Three of Swords, but they were all upright. So your answer would be yes, but all 3 of your cards would spell destruction and sadness and loneliness and disaster. It's like, so what do you take? Do you take the yes, the person likes me, but there's all this bad stuff that is surrounding it, or, because it could happen. Or do you say no because the divinatory meanings clearly don't spell good things, and ignore the whole purpose of the spread in the first place? So I never felt comfortable using it. Usually, again, I try to say, like the first question I asked by accident is really a better question. What, how will our relationship pan out? And then if you get those same cards, you can say to yourself, well, it's clearly not going to work for whatever reason. Whereas then, whereas if you got the Two of Cups, the more obvious signs of success, the Sun, the Chariot, things like that, the Lovers, obviously, then you could say that it's going to go pretty well, right? So I find that that's a more effective result to ask. I always ask what the result of something's going to be, um, how if something's going to pan out, and that gives me a better feel than asking yes or no. So that's just me. Again, find what works for you and do it. I hope I answered your questions in as succinctly a way as possible. And if you have any more questions, please let me know. Thanks for the question in the first place. Bye-bye.